Hey everyone, I'm Gracie and welcome back to the Graceful Military Child podcast. The world should know how unique military children are. We may look like normal children on the outside, but we go through some pretty extraordinary circumstances that shape us to the leaders we are today. I am super excited to continue on with our No Greater Sacrifice series, sharing the stories of military children whose loved ones were critically wounded or fallen in action. I hope you find inspiration from these scholars that just because a traumatic situation may happen, you are still able to achieve your hopes and dreams. Hi, Amari. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing okay. How are you? How have you been since the last time we spoke?
I've been doing good, recovering from the DC trip, and that was amazing. So yeah, how about you?
I guess ever since I got back, I still haven't even gotten a rest. I don't know if you knew, but my mom recently broke her ankle.
Oh man.
And my parents are moving, and so it's just been hectic around here lately. So
yeah, I can imagine. So tell me a little bit, speaking of your mom, tell me a little bit about your mom and your stepdad and their service in the military.
So yeah, it's my mom, my stepdad, and my dad. They all served. My mom was first in the Air Force and then later the Army, and my dad was in the Army. My stepdad was first in the Army and then later the Marines. And I always joke that he never claims the Army because you know how the Marines are. Like he would never say that.
Yeah. So what were their jobs in the military and the service? What were they doing?
I believe my dad was like a rigger, a parachute rigger. My mom in the Air Force, I can't quite remember, but in the Army, she was a paralegal. My stepdad, I'm really not sure. I know he saw like quite a bit of combat though, but he doesn't really talk much about it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard for some people to talk about it because of what they've seen, what they did, the experiences they've had.
Yeah, and and I understand. So, I never push him on it or anything like that. So,
what were your experiences as a military child then with 3 parents in the service?
Yeah, honestly, there were challenges, but I remember loving it. Like, I actually miss moving and meeting new people and the excitement of waking up early for a road trip or something like that. I've always felt really grateful for the experience that I had growing up the way that I did. And like I always tell people, it actually feels strange to me to stay in a place too long. Like I'll look at the calendar, look at my watch, and I'm like, I should be moving. Like it's time to go. Why am I still here? Type of thing,
And you get so used to moving, so used to where it becomes a habit and you're like, okay, it's been, 2 years, we're not moving. Why aren't we moving?
Right. Like something's wrong. Like,
yeah. Yeah. There's like a different, I don't know. There's something different where it's like you're stable in one area for so long. You're like, okay, I can get used to this, but this still feels kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then once you're moving, you're like, this is normal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's like all I knew.
Yeah.
So like my parents retired in high school, or like they were in that process. It was a very long process for both of them. And so like for me, the longest place I had been was when we moved back to Georgia for high school for me. And prior to that, like I had never been in a place for like longer than, I don't know, like 2 years or something like that. And it was strange because I usually am like so used to preparing like to say goodbye to people, or even just being around other people who are moving so often.
Yeah.
But at the time, we weren't on base. Like, so I was going to civilian high school, and it was strange for me to realize like maybe I should start to settle in and make some like lasting connections with people, you know?
Yeah, and especially that transition of, you know, a DoD-based high school or any type of school where you're like constantly on your toes of who's moving next or
Right.
where are you going, and then transferring into a school where you don't really move. It's such a change, and it's hard to make those connections because you're always used to someone moving.
Right. And like looking around, everybody went to school together for like their whole lives. Like, so they knew each other in preschool, right? Like, or their parents knew each other and their siblings knew each other and you know, their siblings, like they would have teachers, and I would see my teachers talk to my friends being like, you're so-and-so's brother, aren't you? Like they can just tell. And like,
Yeah.
I will never have an experience like that, namely because like, or, you know, firstly, I'm the oldest of 5 kids, but even like without that, like that just that's not something that I've ever gotten to experience, you know?
Yeah, and moving, you know, they do have these friendships and you end up becoming more or less friends with your teachers, that it's like, okay, I might be going into middle school now, but I'll come back and visit you.
Exactly,
like, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
I still have connections with one of my teachers, but then it's at the same point weird because I knew her for not even a full school year, where she would have known me for 12 years if we were in a regular situation that wasn't military life.
Right, right. And you know, sometimes I do, like if there's like anything that I feel like I missed out on, it would be something like that. Like just know, like having, because you can still have like lasting connections and good, authentic, genuine connections, like living as a military brat. I just feel as though they take a lot more work and effort on all sides. Being that people are constantly moving and relocating, and like there's always, you really have to make more of an effort to stay in contact, as opposed to like growing up living in the same town and your parents and your parents' parents lived in that same town and everybody like sees each other at Walmart, you know, like
Yeah.
it's a bit, it's I don't want to say like easier, it maybe it's just like less complicated to like maintain those like lasting relationships that I do feel like I always wanted. Like I always had this image in my mind of like living next door to my best friend, like growing up next door.
Yes.
And like having the little like cans with the strings attached to them and like throwing it through our windows. Like I don't know where I got that, but like, you know, like, I always wanted that. And you know, I would like we've only owned like our own, or I guess where we're living now, this might be like our third home. My point being, like every house that I grew up in was owned by the government, right? Like, and
yeah, it was temporary.
Exactly. So I was, you know, I'd never had like my best friend next door. We grew up together for years and like went through different stages of life together or anything like that, you know?
Yeah. Your best friend's always like, you know, you meet these best friends at wherever you're stationed, and then you move, they move, whatever.
Yeah.
And then your best friend's like states away, sometimes countries away.
Exactly.
And you have to put in that work to keep your friendship, and it's hard.
It is. It's hard, and it can be like, I don't know if draining is the right word, but like I said, it's different from like walking out of your front door and like being able to see your friend, you know?
Exactly.
You have to like schedule things, like and scheduling is hard.
It is, especially with different time zones.
Yes. And I know you know this, like with your podcast, like
yes,
it's stressful.
Yeah, because I've recorded with people, you know, I'm on the East Coast. I've recorded with people on the West Coast, and it's like, okay, we want to do 3:00. Okay, is it 3:00 your time or 3:00 my time? Like, what are we doing?
And with the West Coast, or like, I'm even thinking about like Texas, just how big it is.
Yeah, 1 hour away.
Yeah, like, and there's just, there's so much, the time differences really affect a lot. And,
yeah,
you know, especially when you're talking about like living in a foreign country, like, you know, someone's going to be losing sleep if you want to.
Yeah,
you know.
I know. I recorded with Ashlyn. She was on a couple weeks ago, and she was actually in Germany when we recorded the episode. So we recorded where it was afternoon at my time, and then it was night her time. So it was like, it's weird getting those, I guess, timings where it works for both of us, but, you know, it's just so weird.
It is. It's difficult, and it just takes a lot on everybody's part to sort of bridge all these different gaps. But you know, even still, I wouldn't trade growing up the way that I did. I thought it was so fun. Like, it was exciting. And
where did you get to live?
I got to live. So I was born in Atlanta, but I like grew up, or you know, I think we moved when I was like 5 or something. But we lived. The first base I remember living on was Fort Benning, which is in Columbus, Georgia, and then we moved to Fort Jackson, which is in South Carolina, and then we moved to Fort Drum, which is in New York, and we moved to Mannheim in Germany. After that, we moved to another base. I think K-Town, which is also in Germany. Yeah. Well, okay. We it's hard to.
So hard to remember.
It is. We first lived in Mannheim, and then after that we moved off base in Germany. We were still in Germany in Bruckmühlbach, Miesau. I couldn't really tell you like if that's east, west, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And then we moved to K-Town, Kaiserslautern. After that, we moved to Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And then after that, we moved back to Georgia. Yeah, I think that was it.
You've had your fair share of moving.
I did. I wish I got to move more. Like, I know that's like such a weird thing, but I really do.
Yeah. I got to move twice, and I'm like, I missed out on so much.
Yeah. But the thing is, you know, there's still so much life ahead of us. And like, it's, you know, it's different when you're like moving with your family and like packing up your whole life and you still have grade school to go through. But I don't know about you, but I definitely plan to do a lot of traveling. Like, just.
Yes. Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I didn't get to travel the world with the military, so I'm going to travel the world, you know, by myself if I have to. What was it like living in Germany? You were there for quite some time, it seems.
Well, yeah, I think we were there for like 3 years. So it was like one of those things where we moved every year in Germany.
Yeah.
I loved it. As a culture, I felt like it's a very like peaceful, quiet, clean country. I think some of it, I don't want to sound like uneducated or uncultured, historically speaking, but based off of what I remember and what I was told, like some of it was because they don't want to sort of have like a repeat of the Holocaust. So they're just a very like chill country now. Well, you know, and when I was there, now there's a lot going on. But when I was there, it was just a very nice place to be, even as like I was in like middle school at the time. So, you know, I'm just not coming into my own, and my mom is like allowing me to go on the train by myself with my friends. And I don't know if we lived in the States, if she were to allow me to do that, but I just remember, I remember having so much freedom, even in middle school. You know, it wasn't even just like, I'm sure like a lot of it was the fact that we lived on base, which is another thing that I miss, just like that sense of security you feel. And like, you know, you know the base, like, you know, that's your world, you know? But yeah, I remember really, really appreciating the location of Germany because my family and I, you know, because of like the way Germany is situated, you can travel to like all these other countries, and it's not long, it's not hard, it's not a hard drive or anything like that. So I remember we traveled so much, and like we got to try all these different foods, and like I love eating. Like
everyone does.
I know, like, but like when it comes to traveling, like, I'll sightsee. Like I can appreciate beauty, but if I have to like pick one thing, it would be like eating my way through the world. Like,
yes,
I don't need to go on like excursions or go to museums. I will learn through the food. But that's what I got to do a lot of, like, because we lived in Germany, and we went to like Paris and Prague and Turkey and all these places, and like we went on maybe at least one cruise throughout Europe. I think that was my first cruise in my life, and like I just remember just feeling so grateful and like fancy, and like it was great. Especially I always think about how my parents had me when they were like 17, 18. Like my life could have been a lot different if it weren't for the military.
Right.
And that's really why they joined, because they just wanted to provide for me and later my other siblings. So, but yeah, no one could tell me anything. Like I felt like I was living life, like growing up.
You're royalty.
Yeah. Like I enjoyed myself, as a military brat, and like I take so much pride and joy in like calling myself that, or like feeling,
Yeah, it's definitely, it sounds like a derogatory term saying military brat, but it's like a badge of honor.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. It's like, it's like a little club, and my mom has to remind me just how little of the population can call themselves that.
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers, but when she reminds me, I'm like, whoa, like, and I guess I can, just thinking about being back on campus, and how I think I met one person whose mom was in the service, but it wasn't like a big part of her life, and she doesn't call herself a military brat, like, so you don't even like meet people who get that culture,
Yeah, and even when you meet someone who's a military brat, it's like you don't even talk about that at first. And it may be months or years until you realize that you have that in common.
Yeah. Especially, if you're not, when you're like outside of the space of being on base and different things like that, it becomes like I think a secondary thing for a lot of people. Because like even me, like I've learned that people just don't know what it is or what it means.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to be around people back in DC and to meet you and your family, and like how just I don't even know how many times we've said military brat just in this short span that we've talked just now. But I like it, and I like miss, referring to myself in that way,
Yeah. And, that DC trip, it was like, there were maybe like 10 of us there, but it's like a community within the 10 of us. We had not met before. And then,
Never.
You can have conversations with these people like you've known them forever.
Yeah. I mean, I miss that. I miss that so much. Like, there's just like an assumed understanding because of like different life experiences that we all share.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, not to sound like cheesy, but I just find it beautiful. Like,
yeah,
because it is hard growing up the way that we did. Like, that's a hard life to live as a child. Children need stability. Most people, just humans in general, need stability. Yeah. And we didn't have none of that.
Right.
None of that. I guess you could say we found stability in the instability.
Yes. Having like many moves and, a parent deployed. How do you find stability in that?
I still don't even know.
Yeah.
It's like, I think living on base, especially, that they find ways to keep the kids entertained. Like another thing that I miss is like the teen centers, or I'm not sure. I think they call them different things like at different bases that I was on, but like those little after school places or like the little clubhouses that you could go to. And I remember those being so fun and like loving the people that worked there. And they always just had like excursions and different trips and things for us to do. Like I miss that, like that sense of like you could just trust sending your kids there, or like I'm bored, I would go there on the weekend. Like, like there was always something safe and like comfortable to do. Like, and it's like hard to find a space like that off base. Like, I don't have children. I do have 4 younger siblings, but I do know that it's hard finding like childcare or just some place to keep your kids like locked in mentally and like engaged. Like, but when you live on base, everything is there.
I know.
Like, everything is there. It's like a little mini world, like a community, and you just don't find that outside of it.
And I think it's so special, like those, I mean, anything on base, the majority of the people running base are civilians. Like you look at the schools, teachers are mostly civilians. Like those teen centers, they're mostly civilians running it.
Yeah.
But they care so much about these kids where they understand us. They probably never lived the military child life, so they don't fully understand it, but they've lived enough that they can understand who we are, more or less.
Yeah. Like I remember going, when I lived in Germany, there were like local German people that would work there. I think some of them had ties to like the US military, but not all of them did. Like, I don't even know like all of their stories. Like I said, I was in like 6th grade, so I didn't like ask that many questions. I felt like, I'm not going to like do a whole background check, but I did feel like they were like trustworthy individuals. But looking back, I remember like they lived off base, like they grew up in Germany, but they were like family, and they didn't have any really like ties to the military, now that I think about it, but they still felt, I don't know, just like a part of the community. And I always think about those people there that like really made me feel like the teen center or whatever was like my second home. Like just the way that you like walk in there, you feel safe,
Yeah. I think that's on base in general.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Going through security, knowing that only people with the little ID cards were allowed in, like it makes you feel safe.
Yeah, it does. I do miss it.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about kind of your transition, I guess, out of base when your parents retired, and how that kind of felt, how that transition was.
Yeah. Let me think. So the last base we lived on, that was Fort Bliss in El Paso. And we moved back to Georgia. Yes. Okay, so I moved, I think, like the second semester of my freshman year of high school. So that was weird, to have to like come into a high school. Everybody's already gotten started. Like never, I also was going to a school where everyone, like I said, grew up together and knew each other. So, but, so that was difficult. That was hard to come in, and, it's the second semester. I'm the new girl once again, but this time in high school, and like, that is challenging.
It's hard because, in high school, these people have known each other for 9-10 years, and then you're trying to like get your way in.
Find your way, yeah. And And that would have already been the case, but I came late in the school year, and I was also transitioning into a school that just wasn't great. And it was like, so the second semester, this is like Christmas break, winter, and this is in Georgia, right? Where if there's like flurries, like a little bit of ice on the road, the whole state shuts down.
That's the same way Texas is.
I know they're never prepared for any, like the slightest bit of snow. People act like they can't drive. Like,
I know.
It's hilarious to watch because, I used to live in upstate New York, Fort Drum, where the only time we would miss school if it were snowing was if the snow was covering our house, right?
And you were prepared for the snow at all times.
Yeah, like if the snow wasn't covering your window, then you're still going to school. But here, so I was already coming late, and then we also ended up having so many snow days, and I wasn't really learning a lot. Like it was not a good school, and it was definitely like a new environment, like socially for me. So that was challenging. And it was weird because, so we moved back to the town that I lived in while my mom was deployed. So at this time, my dad, my brother, and I moved back to this town while my mom was deployed to be closer to family, so my dad could have help with us. So at this time, when my mom was first deployed, I think I had like 2 weeks left of fourth grade or something like that. So I finished fifth grade there. So I remember kids there that I met, that I was friends with. So then like 10 years or however many years later, I moved back for high school, and I see some of them, and that I realize now, like, what I was dealing with was social anxiety, but that was weird too, to sort of like, I've like moved all these times and like met all these different people, and to come back and, my friends from like fifth grade were still there together.
Yeah.
And I expected to just slip right back in and be friends with them again. And that turned out to just not be the case. And that was painful for me. It was also just hard for me to sort of understand that they also had these lives that went on while I was gone.
Right.
Like I knew that, but I don't think that I like truly like internalized it. So I just thought that I would have my friends again from fifth grade. But we're all different people, and there are all these little things behind the scenes that I just didn't hear about because I had been gone and moving like for so long. And so that was just challenging because I thought that I'd be able to rely on them in that connection. But, it was basically like we were strangers.
Yeah. And it's like, you may have been friends with them for so long, and then you move because the military life takes you somewhere else, and then you come back and they're like, you left us. Like, why would you want to be friends with us still? You just packed up and left.
Yeah. We actually like really haven't had deep conversations about it. And like, like I said, they're not military. So they just,
it's hard to understand the fact that we move all the time, or we go through some different things, and it's hard to accept that even too.
Yeah, for sure. And like, it's hard to, like, I'm still trying to find like the words and the vocabulary and the language to like explain my experience. But, freshman year, high school freshman Amari, like, and my peers, like, I know it was difficult to attempt to like break down the ways that we were feeling.
Yeah.
And I there was also a moment I saw another friend from fifth grade, And she said, she made like a comment like, "Oh, Amari, you look the same." And I, maybe if I were like 30 or 4 or something, I'd be like, "Oh, great, thanks." But, as a high schooler, it's like, no, I don't want to look like I'm 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, what? I look the same? And, because they looked grown up, like they looked cool or whatever, but I was still like, still a little Amari. I don't know.
Well, and it's hard once you've moved, 10 different times and to come back and hear, oh, you look the same. Like, what did you expect? Like,
yeah, like what is that? What does that mean?
What did you want me to come back looking completely different?
Yeah, like, I don't know. It was strange. It was, very like Twilight Zone, and just the I don't know, like the mind just doesn't really know how to deal with, or I just speak for myself. My mind, I didn't know how to deal with coming back to this town. Like this, it was the same town.
Yeah. It feels eerie when nothing has changed.
Yeah. 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 It was very eerie. It was so strange, and it was weird how nothing changed, but so much changed.
Yeah. It's a lot of the things when you go back. Even we went back to Texas when we lived in San Antonio. We went back last year, and nothing had changed really. Like, I still knew where everything was, knew how to get to places, knew, we even went back and saw our old house, and it was the same exact color.
Right.
Like, you can't really paint your houses in the military, but, same color, same everything. And it was so weird to go back and say, is this the same place I left?
Yeah.
But the people are all different.
Yeah. That's what it is. Like, it's I guess the space is sort of like a snapshot of like a point in space and time, but the people, like, they're still like those same individuals, but they've gone, well, at least, back when I came back to this town, they were the same individuals, because it's not like they weren't moving,
right. It wasn't a military base.
Exactly. So they were the same like individuals, but they had all these life moments that I missed out on that changed them in some way. And
right.
So, I come back like, oh, I remember you. Let's be friends again.
Yeah.
But I remember them, but I don't know them anymore. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's a hard feeling to, I guess, go around, because you have to basically start your whole friendship again.
You really do. You really do. And, that's always hard, like just being the new girl.
Yep.
But at so many other places, everybody's kind of new.
Yeah.
But not here. Not in high school. It was just me.
Yeah.
It was just me. And another thing, like the administration was really making it difficult to like get my credits transferred and different things like that. Like I was used to being, in advanced classes and blah, blah, blah. But they were trying to say like all these things didn't transfer and their classes were different. And I think that that's another thing that a lot of military families run into. And I don't think that it's like talked about enough, if at all. The challenges that people run into when they're going to a civilian school. After transferring from one that's on base and from dealing with the school that understands that credits, you might have to do a little bit of working around, or like there's going to be, not everything is going to match up one for one. Some institutions understand that and are willing to work with you and are prepared for that. Others do not want to hear anything. They just want to put you in whatever class. And if my mom had listened to them, I would have been behind. Like,
yeah,
they were really trying hard to like mess up my academic career, and so that wasn't fun either. And it's never fun when you're like, after going to so many schools, at some point, I guess you're like, you're kind of thinking like, is this going to be a difficult transition just with the
Yeah.
school? You know, like you have all these other things to worry about, but then you have to think about your kids' like credits. Like, is your kid going to graduate on time? Like,
Yeah. And I kind of had a weird transition, I guess, from a civilian school to a military school since we were a reserve family. So going from a civilian school where I was going to be starting a gifted program and, in all these advanced classrooms, then going to Texas and I had a retest for gifted.
yes.
And I didn't even hit the marks for gifted.
Yeah.
And it's like, I should have been a gifted student, but because I didn't retest and hit the marks I was supposed to,
Yeah.
then I was not. So, and then even moving to Florida, it was hard understanding what my mom was doing when she said, get a letter from every single one of your teachers saying that you are advanced and you took these advanced classes and asked for a copy of just like a copy of the cover of your textbook.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I
why are
actually
we
think we
doing
did the
this?
same thing. Yeah, I think we did a
Yeah.
similar thing. Like even between schools, or just we had to make sure we had proof of everything.
Yes.
Everything.
It was insane to have to do all of that stuff to, just kind of prove that you have the knowledge.
Right. And it just shouldn't even be like that. Like, why not just let a kid try?
Yeah.
Like, see how they do in the class.
Right.
And then move from there.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved with No Greater Sacrifice, where we actually met, and your experience at Dartmouth.
Yes.
Congratulations also by graduating.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's nice to be done with that. that I'm exhausted. Yeah, so, senior year in high school, I was applying to a lot of scholarships. I think a lot of them were for like state schools, and I just knew that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But I was having a hard time finding like other significant scholarships. And I don't know if my mom's really good at research. I don't know if she found out about it or if someone told her about it, but she told me to apply to NGS, and I had never heard of NGS at that time either, actually. But, I read about what they did and everything, and it sounded like, oh, this is exactly like what I was looking for, like what I needed, like, like an organization that understands, like the behind the scenes of a transcript. Like, not that I always had, like top grades and whatever, but I wanted to be a part of, I wanted to be understood beyond my academics. And the main way to do that, I think, was to be able to understand what it was like growing up the way that I did. And I know you probably heard me say a few things about it in DC. I was worried that I just wasn't going to get accepted for the NGS scholarship because I'm very grateful and lucky to have all of my parents in my life still. And they don't have like extreme physical, issues that are left over from their service. And so I wondered, I wondered because I think at the time NGS, like their scholarship, it was focused on students or children of like who have like lost their parents, or whose parents have like significant like health issues from their service. And my parents have PTSD and like other connecting mental health issues, but it's nothing. It's not It's not the physical.
Yeah.
And they're still here. And I definitely don't want to like underplay the mental health aspect of like what it means to serve. And I do think that it's important, but at the time I just remember being so like worried, like that the scholarship wasn't for me, or that I might take it from someone else who like needs more help, you know?
Right.
But I was ecstatic to hear that, like, you know, they awarded me with the scholarship, and they've been, at first, before Kelly joined on, Rebecca was like my point of contact. So we've been emailing like all 4 years of my time at Dartmouth, which has been wild because she's been with me through a lot of ups and downs, and I haven't met her until I graduated, until we were in DC. So that was weird.
Yeah.
But it's been nice to see that how much they care about the other, like the underbellies, like the hidden side of a lot of the issues that service members deal with. Because I know from my experience just how much that has affected my home life, their mental health, just how much that has affected my home life and the way that I grew up. You know, like I said, it was great, and I wouldn't change anything, I don't think, because I'm asked that a lot. Like, oh, if you could change anything, or if you could grow up like normal, would you do it? And I don't think that I would. It was difficult, but no, I don't think that I would.
It makes kids like resilient, and it makes us who we are. Like if we grew up that normal way, we wouldn't be as resilient as we are today. We wouldn't be, we wouldn't have all these characteristics that we do have because of the military.
I would not be the same person. And I'm still learning and growing, but I like who I am right now, but yeah, so so I applied to NGS, and I was awarded the scholarship, and they've just I've been fortunate enough to not pay anything for school, and not many people can say that today at all, especially with the talks of like student loan forgiveness that have been going on recently. I always knew it was bad, but seeing people just put out how much money they owe, like in numbers on the internet,
it's
I'm
really
like,
crazy.
I could not imagine living with that weight.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine.
That's one thing my mom always told me and my sister. We were never going to take out a loan.
My mom told me the exact same thing. Yeah. My mom told me,
no matter what we had to do, we were going to make it work.
Exactly. My mom told me the exact same thing. And she tells my siblings that too, like, as they're like, we're never going to do that ever.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm thankful for that too, because I know so many other people at my school where it was like a given that they were going to get a loan.
Right.
It was like a normal thing.
Especially going somewhere like Dartmouth and being out of state. That's another, completely additive that, student loans are almost a certain at that point.
They are for a lot of people. So like, yeah, at Dartmouth, a lot of the students, I can't remember the specific numbers of the statistics, but quite a lot of them do come from families that can pay tuition in full. Like,
yeah.
And tuition is almost $80,000.
It's crazy to just think about that.
I can't even, I still cannot wrap my mind around it. So yes, that's what I would be dealing with. And I just can't even imagine being able, because I had a lot of challenges transitioning to a school like Dartmouth, academically, socially, and whatnot. But I just can't imagine just the added pressures beyond all of those things with thinking about how you're going to pay for school, or how you're going to just thinking about all these loans.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're supposed to focus.
That's one thing I'm so grateful for. Like, we joke about it all the time. Like, you know, my dad lost his leg, and it's like, thank you for losing your leg. Now, I can actually go to school and not have to pay anything. Like, because I couldn't imagine working a full-time job, which I probably would be, working a full-time job, taking a full-time load.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how I'd be doing it.
I mean, I know that you would make it work, but it wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be, I think you should be having fun in college. I think you can have fun and learn. Like, I think you can do all those things, but that would be so difficult, if NGS wasn't here. And my family, we joke about it too. Like, just like, I know it's not, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It might not be all that appropriate, but we joke about it too, about like my parents like being crazy. And I'm like, well, it's, crazy parents are like $100K in student loans. Like,
which would you prefer?
Yeah, like we're working through it. It's gonna be okay. At least I have my degree and I have no money. I'm not tied to anybody. Like, I'm free, like, and that feels so good.
Yeah.
It feels so good because now I'm free, right? I can, because I plan on getting to a point where I can help my family out, like, the most that I can. Like, I want my parents to have the best, like, care that they can get. If I had student loans, I just don't think that my brain could even, I wouldn't have space for that.
Yeah, because you'd be thinking about student loans and how you're going to pay it off.
Yeah, and it's like impossible, really, for most people to pay off their student loans.
It's die impossible with them.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, like, because you're just going to die with them, they just say like, oh, well, I'm just not going to pay them.
Right.
And you can get away with that, but only for so long.
They're going to come back and you're going to have to pay them at one point.
They're going to find you.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about the degree you got and what you're wanting to do, because this is so unique about you, I think.
So I majored in Black Studies. At Dartmouth, it's the program is called African and African American Studies. I'm probably going to be going to grad school, clearly. But beyond, or in addition to that, I'm really interested in music and fashion. I'd like to model for a little bit and sing, make my own music, which I am working on. I've always like written my own like lyrics and music. It's just like the only instrument I play is my voice. Like that's what I say. So it's about right now, just, I have friends who do music here and there. So I'm just trying to like learn what I can from them and, hop on a track or whatever, like whenever I can. And I've been considering like trying to find some open bar nights or something like that, or open mic nights here in Atlanta, just to get more experience with that. And I'll be sending in some photos to some agencies soon. And, just hoping for the best, because I really want to model. I love fashion and I always have. So I'm really into like media and art as well. So I think in grad school, I probably will continue to study Black studies, but I'm also really interested in philosophy, in something called Afro-pessimism, and like in like Black thought, Black being. I'm really into like Hegel and Heidegger, who like Heidegger's like this German philosopher who has written so much. I don't even know how one could do that on just like the nature of being, or like metaphysics and like it's super like heady stuff. But I would love to like have the time and the space to study that more and not have to worry about like being homeless. So I'm very thankful that because of my parents' service, it will be very easier for me to go to grad school. And then NGS, I believe they're also willing to help me with that as well. So I'll be doing that after a little break. And hopefully I can try and find a way to sort of meld like the Black studies and philosophy with my music and my art.
That's incredible. That's really awesome. So to conclude and wrap this up, what is one piece of advice you would give to any military child?
I think that one piece of advice I would give to any military child would be to find the light, like find the good in all the crappy, the dark days. I think there are a lot more opportunities in the life that, that in some ways we are forced to live because of our parents. I think that it's good to talk to people outside of the military life and like see just how much like larger our worlds are and can be because of the connectedness and the interconnectedness that we do have, and the fact that like, you will always have like that one person, but then that other person is traveling and meeting all these other people, and they're traveling and meeting all these other people, and like, so your network is just so much bigger than you can even imagine right now. So yeah, I think it's hard and it's easier said than done, but I would just try my best to instill in other military kids to like look at the bright side of the life that we should be grateful for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your experience, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it was so nice to see and like actually finally talk more with you. And I wish you all the best as well. And I'm very excited to see where your podcast goes. And I will be sharing it with everybody I know.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Grace of a Military Child podcast. If you enjoyed listening, don't forget to follow, like, share, subscribe, review, and comment. You can also follow us at Grace of Military Child Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for more podcast-related content. If you or someone you know is a military child who would like to be featured on the podcast, please send us a message to one of our social media platforms or send us an email to grace.of.a.military.child@gmail.com. For more information on No Greater Sacrifice, you can go to nogreatersacrifice.org or send an email to info@nogreatersacrifice.org. Thank you, and join us back next week for another inspiring story.